often. So I never send my slides out afterwards, just warning you. The video probably will go up. Actually, if I shut this, I'm not going to borrow the video. I think I've got this one video somewhere else as well, then I can see you, make it more interactive. So you learn much better if you write your own notes. If I send you the slides, and you wouldn't look at them anyhow. So it goes into our brains better when we note the things that are really important and relevant to you. And you'll look at it, and when you're writing your notes, make them as creative as possible. Our right hand side of the brain is the creative one, and our left side is the logical half of our brain. You can remember that because I'm logical, and left and logical begin with an L. So left logical, that's where I'm likely to be giving you the information in more of a logical way, because that's kind of how we teach stuff. But unfortunately, your long-term memory is in the creative side. So we have to move the learning from the logical place where it's probably going to land into the creative side. We do that through, make your notes as pictures or arrows or bullet points or colors, even if you've got, some color pens within reach, just to help you remember this, so that you don't wake up tomorrow morning and go, what on earth was she going on about? Can't remember anything. So for those who haven't met me before, I don't know that much about me, haven't looked me up. My background, a little bit about me as to why I should be sat here in front of you talking about sales. So my background is a deep corporate background in huge multinationals, like Diageo with all these lovely products. I then did a stint with GE, consumer finance, so really different. Diageo, very consumer-led, very much about the sales and marketing. GE, very much about process, compliance, risk management, completely different cultures. But then I actually missed my brands. So I went and spent the last 9 years of my corporate life with PepsiCo. So Pepsi, Tropicana, Walker's Crisp, some great brands there. And it did feel a bit like going back home, back with all my products and brands. Through that, I was in senior HR director roles in those organizations, which is actually a place where you get to know all the functions the best, because you're recruiting into all the functions, you're performance managing the functions, you're on the leadership team. I was on the leadership team of every function. I was latterly on the operating board of Walker's Crisps and on the operating board of Tropicana. So real breadth of experience there. Did some international projects in Hungary, in Madrid, in Spain, and of course the UK. But then I had my sort of eureka moment and went, you know what, I'm a bit stale with all of this. I want to do something different. And I had an amazing flight. I was going to train the Turkey HR team in org design, which is one of my specialist areas. And I was on the flight next to an architect, and we got chatting, as sometimes you do, sometimes you don't when you're flying, isn't it? And he'd got a team of about 18 and had no idea really about, he was an architect by background, an architect by training, and that's what he was. But he'd obviously acquired team in the process of growing, but really didn't know how to leverage them, how to get the best out of them, how to motivate them, how to measure and manage them. So he basically got 4 hours of consultancy for the flight from London to Istanbul. And I just had this window into SMEs, which I'd never had. I was a corporate girl. And to see how he was going to, literally was like, oh, great, I can do that next week. Or we've got a team meeting, I've got that, and he was like, just going to put it straight into practice. And I was like, wow, this is so much more impactful. I want to play in this space. So that was the beginning of the journey out of corporate, and then I found Action Coach. So we're a business coaching franchise where I can continue, because I was working with the GMs and the VPs in corporate, so I could keep working with the leaders of the business on the strategic agenda, but as well as doing sort of team leadership, team development, I could then spread across into sales, marketing, finance, etc. And And that's when I really realized exactly how much sales and marketing I had picked up, and finance, all the rest of it, just through osmosis, living in those kind of brand marketing and sales led businesses. So that's a little bit about how I come to be with you today. 5 years now into my Action Coach business, based in High Wycombe, supporting the sort of South Bucks area around High Wycombe. And a big supporter of Bucks Business First, and I've done been a speaker there. Actually, at their 5-year anniversary, I think they're at 10 years now, so that shows. Need to update that photo. So, hope that gives you confidence. I know a little bit about sales and marketing, from things to learn from corporate, but also lots of experience of doing that with SMEs. So, my goal for you this morning is to be your educator, to challenge you, be your coach, ask those questions, prod and probe a little bit. And I want you to go away with at least 5 different actions, 5 different strategies that you could apply to your business. So great to see that little note, Justina, to get the notepad. That's definitely needed. So starting off with a couple of insights, really. We call these actually generalized principles. This is one I always start with, and I make no apologies if you've heard this before, if you've attended one of my things before. Definitely want to get down on your piece of paper. Success is driven by this equation. What we end up having is a product of who we are being and what we are doing. Now, this sounds very simple, but it's also really true. So this is true in life, at home, and in business. The more we do, the more actions we do, and the more conscious we are about who we're being when we're doing those actions, i.e. the better we're doing them, the more mindfully we're doing that, and more aware of how we're approaching and landing with people, the more being we're doing, and we multiply that up by what we're actually doing, the actions, ends up in us having more. I mean, this works for anything. If you want loads more friends, then you need to do some activities to get together with people, meet some new people. And when you're there, you need to be someone who is going to be attractive to be friends with. Yes, you need to be out there meeting people, etc. If you want to have a bigger house to live in, you need to be able to have a bigger, you need to do activities that get you the financials that you need. And probably to do that, you need to be someone bigger to attract that salary base for the multiplier, or to attract the bonus for the down payment. In business, if you want to have a bigger business, bigger than what you are at the moment, you're going to have to do some different stuff, and you're probably going to have to be a different leader. Does that make sense? Can you see that? Yes. It's a really honest equation as well, because it works backwards. So if you've laid out a plan, I'm a great one for planning. 90-day planning is a big thing with me. If you've got a plan and you don't achieve that plan, you haven't got the results of that plan, then either you didn't do sufficient things that you needed to do, or you weren't doing them in the way that was going to get the result that you wanted from those actions. So it's like a very top level diagnostic, and they multiply each other up. So if you've got a score of 2 on being and a score of 2 on doing, you're going to end up with 4 level of having, if you like. If you're scoring a 10 on being and a 10 on doing, we're going to have 100 haves. So it's a really good time to take a look in the mirror, because this applies to sales as well. If you're not getting the sales you want, do you need to do something different in your sales process? Or do you need to be someone different in the approach, in the style, in the directness, in the confidence you're oozing as you're being your salesperson to your prospects? So some food for thought there. Anybody getting a sense? Are they erring on the I need? Some people might be, very high on the be, lower on the do. Some might be the other way around. So just jot yourself a note. Which one do you think for you is more important to focus on thinking particularly because we're here for sales, in that sales environment. So is it more being or more doing?
Definitely a being from my side.
Definitely a being. Yes, sales is one of those things. There's a lot of being in sales, actually.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of mindset to yeah, excellent. And that's important because another of life's truths, and this one is really painful, communication is the response you get. So what do I mean by that? This is where we're really taking accountability for what we're getting here and how we're communicating. So if when you communicate something to someone, you don't get the response you want, that's not to do with them, it's to do with you and how you communicated. So your communication wasn't compelling enough for them to take the action that you wanted them to do. Again, this works at home, works with families, works with kids, works in the office. Because how many times do you go, oh, well, in a sales situation, I did everything and they still said no, they didn't want it or whatever. That for me says, actually, yeah, they didn't want it. If they've said no, they're either not ready or you haven't communicated to them a compelling enough reason and urgency for why they would need you right now. So when we take ownership for that, when we take ownership for our communication being the broader sense, communication could be what you're communicating through your social media, through your info packs, through clearly what you say on the phone in the sales call and everything. But when we really own that, it's actually easier to then take action to improve, because then we can go, okay, so what did I not communicate clearly enough or with enough energy or with enough purpose? And to help you then work out maybe where the communication fell down, is our formula for change, which I love. This is one of the tools I use so much in my coaching. So first off, you're going to be saying, Helen, we're here for sales, and now you're talking about a formula for change. Well, my perspective is that to make a sale, we have to convince someone to change, because all sales are about a change process. Your prospect either was surviving without your product and they are now changing to have it, yeah, or they've got your product from someone else, or they have a product that fulfills that need, which is slightly different, and they're changing to have your product or service. So they're either getting it some other way and they're going to move to you, or they're not having it at all and they're going to start having it. Can anybody think of another situation that you might have in a sales scenario? I reckon it has to be one of those two. And both of those involve a change. So I like to think about sales as a change process. And again, it goes back to that community. If we haven't convinced people that that change is the right thing for them right now, we're not going to make the sale. So this is it. The answer in one. Got it? Curious?
No, it takes me back to algebra.
But you're the finance one, aren't you, originally? Or have I got that wrong?
No, not finance.
What does this all mean? So D stands for dissatisfaction. I love algebra, by the way, because it works both sides. You do something to one side and it pops up the other side. So dissatisfaction, and that's dissatisfaction with the current situation. So what we need to do is we need to build through our sales process dissatisfaction with our current, our prospects' current situation. That's on the one side. On the other side, we need to build their vision for what the future can be like with you and your products and services. So the more unhappy they become with where they're at, and the clearer the picture of how much better it's going to be with you, is like charging a battery. I think of it as like charging. You're building energy for change. But this energy has nowhere to go. Like a battery, you can have a fully charged battery, but it doesn't do anything, does it? Until it's plugged into something. So that plugging in process is our F for first step. We need to also make a very clear, straightforward, simple step for them to start moving towards working with you. So have a very clear first step to take. So that dissatisfaction times vision plus first step, sometimes we add in a plus U for urgency, needs to be greater than R, which is their resistance to change. We all have resistance to change. Humans, I think, are almost designed, but it's some of us are more resistant to others, and some of us in different situations are going to be more resistant than other situations. But fundamentally, most people don't wake up in the morning and go, yay, we're going to change something around now. Yeah. Typically, we naturally slope into our comfort zone. So we need the things on the left-hand side to be higher than the resistance, so that overcomes that resistance to change. So I'm going to give you a really silly but fun example of this in a home scenario. So this is a few years old now. We've moved on from this. But a couple of years ago, trying to get my son, late teens, to actually follow the process for the laundry at the weekend was a bit of a challenge. He very much subscribes to the floor drobe system. Anybody got teenagers experienced the floor drobe scenario? Yes, I can see some smiles.
Not
there.
Yet.
Not yet. It will happen. Maybe
Yeah.
some of you are young enough to remember that was you. Anyhow, I like washed on a Saturday, because I've always worked full time. So washing day is Saturday, needs to be dried, ready for the cleaner / ironer to deal with it on the Monday. So that's the process. Saturday morning, can I have all your washing out? Yeah, and then we can get it sorted into loads and washed. All there, apart from one person's. I'll do it in a minute, do it. Did it happen? No. So the day then after lunch, I'm like, flip, and start on the washing. Anyhow, so I'm getting really frustrated. And then maybe it doesn't start till Sunday. And then I'm like, it's all a rush and it's a stress. And I'm badgering him to do it, and he's not doing it. And then it occurred to me, D times V. In that scenario, who had the dissatisfaction?
You did.
Was it me or him?
You.
Self.
Me. Yep. Where was the dissatisfaction with me? Yes. So no wonder it wasn't actually happening. So then I was like, right, no, washing will start at 10 in the morning, and if it's not there, it doesn't get washed. Where have I just moved the dissatisfaction?
Him.
Him. Yes. And I've increased the dissatisfaction, because then it's up to you to get it through the system so that it gets ironed. Otherwise it won't get ironed on Monday if it's not ready, because I'm definitely not doing that. So we moved the dissatisfaction, created the vision. If you do it, if you get it out, then it will happen. You won't have to get involved, and it will be ready. And then we had to create the first step. What was the first step? First step turned out to be having a lovely mother-son session with Amazon, choosing an appropriate linen basket so that things could move off the floor into the linen basket. All he had to do was pick it up and move it onto the landing. And did things improve after? So were they perfect? No. But did they improve? They definitely improved. Yes. So that's a little illustration for you. So think about who's got the dissatisfaction, but also how we build it up. And we'll think of more examples as we go through the sales process. But you get the hang of this equation and how it can work. Again, like many things we teach in action on these generalized principles, they do work home and work. So really, again, it's one of these honest ones. It works backwards as well. When you aren't getting the sale, when you're not moving somebody over their point of resistance, which one of these three isn't strong enough? Did you need to get more dissatisfaction with the current? Did you need to get a higher, stronger vision for what it could be like? Or did you just need to give them an easier first step? So we can work it both ways. And in sales, watch out. The other little trick to this one is you have to gauge the level of resistance you're dealing with. Because what's going to happen if you might have somebody who's not, they're quite close to being ready to buy. So you've got a low level of resistance. What's going to happen if you go way over the top over here? You're going to oversell. Yeah, you're almost going to oversell and you're going to come across as too strong and they'll pull back. So we want this to be stronger than level of resistance, but not too much, not overly, because when you've been sold to and somebody's been really ramming it down your throat. We don't need that. Any questions there? Do shout out if you've got any.
So the overselling, I think, is a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's how eager one becomes, and you just think, oh, if we could just do this last little bit. But I can absolutely see, because I know how I respond to being pushed to make decisions quickly and overselling.
Yes, but I think if we think of sales as helping people, especially in your business, but in every business, as long as they can see the D times V, I think helps prevent that sort of ramming it down the throat approach. But just notice when you're getting the nods and the signals that they are about to buy, then just move on without really killing it. So we're all about helping business owners create a commercial profitable enterprise that works, or that can work. You can choose to work so that you don't have to be fully in the business all the time. You can choose when you're working. We have a 6-step model, and I'm just showing this. Really, I'm going to skip right on through this because we're hopping into level 2, step 2 here, which is what we call our niche level, where it's driving the profitability through sales and marketing. So this is our where we start to create a predictable cash flow, which requires mastery is all about getting the foundations in place in terms of managing mastery of time, mastery of financials, getting a consistent experience out to your customers and knowing where you're going, having a plan. But really, I think, you don't have a business till you've got a sales pipeline that's working for you, because you won't have any money coming in. So we need solid enough foundations to ramp things up, but this is where we spend a lot of time. So this is where our sales and marketing comes in. So I've just spoiled my thunder there. Our definition of a niche, which is where we start off in what we call it our niche layer, is because we want to get you out of price competition. Who feels they compete on price at the moment?
Yeah. No, I don't feel at the moment.
Good. Why do you not feel you compete on price?
I think it was one of the key things I read about when I was researching how to launch my product, is to put aside what competitors are doing, focus on what your product offers and what its value is, what it is worth to you and your customers, and that's your starting point. So at the moment that seems fine, but we shall see.
Great, I love that. You're pricing on value. Sorry, who else? So you don't think you're others think they're competing on price? Do you feel price pressures? Yeah, I'm seeing a nod from Fred. I'm scrolling up and down my videos here. Yeah. So how do we get out of price competition? So we need to be or do something different. That's the definition for any niche. Yes, there is something unique about you. You've got a unique selling point, with an extra bit on it. And the extra bit is, oops, not even written down. That is worth paying more for. And I've seen, I'm afraid, a lot of startups where brilliant sounding ideas, but the consumer just doesn't think they're worth their curiosities, if you like, rather than something that is worth paying more for. So when you are doing something different and it's worth paying more for, then you're no longer competing on price, because you're filling a space that they can't get filled by any other route. Now, somebody challenged me on this, because usually somebody's going, Helen, but what I'm in, it's all the same sort of thing.
For me, it's
I mean,
a lot of my competition is a race to the bottom or is a race to the top. So, you know, they're far bigger companies than me who are charging whatever they decide, because, you know, they've got a bit of a reputation. But then a lot of my smaller competition will charge as little as possible just in the job. And so I've realised quite quickly I need to sell myself and the value of my business and the support, rather than going, oh, do you know what, Bill's charging £20 for that, I'll charge 19, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Fred, you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the local market. I would say that is pretty much our niche. You know, we're still high street sort of recruitment, you know, we've got a lot of competition in the local market, and it is hard to differentiate ourselves from them. You know, they're also good. I can't say they're not, and you know, it's kind of finding that USP, whatever you want to call it, niche that does differentiate us. You know, which is not always easy. But you know, it's quite price competitive market as well, so it is tricky.
It is, but when you've got that magic candidate,
exactly.
Then,
when you've got the magic candidate, it's life's easy.
yeah. So we need to dig and delve and find that, because there always is. Your clients choose you versus someone else for a reason.
Yeah, true.
So everybody has a niche available to them. It's actually sometimes difficult to know what it is, but when you look hard enough, you will find it. So that might be your first piece of homework, if you don't already have, if you're not really clear why you're different and why you're paying more for. That is key to get clear on that, because that's going to so help your sales process. So we have 5 ways of looking at increasing our profits. These blue bits, the red bits, the numbers people typically know. I'm just going to go through this quickly because I want to get onto the more salesy stuff, but there's a reason for this. So we track these numbers, the blue numbers, because that's what's going to drive your increase in profits. So I'm just going to move through this, on to the next one, because I want these circles. So when we're looking at this, the sales, what I want to say is, because as we move these numbers forward, if we have, say, 4,000 leads a year on a conversion rate of 25%, that means we would have 1,000 customers. If, say, they did, each of those customers on average did 2 transactions a year at an average value of £100, we'd end up with a revenue of 200,000. Any mathematicians can validate this. With a profit margin of 25% gives us 50,000. If we increase each of those blue lines, which are impacts that we can control within our business and drive, if we increase each one of those by just 10%, which is what these numbers represent, by the time we've done that 5 times, we've got the multiplier effect, and we've actually increased our profit by 61%, which is a really powerful way of increasing your profits. I can sit down with you afterwards and work out what your numbers are for you. But the point I want to make here is, of these 5 levers that we've got in blue, 3 of them rely on your sales skills. So number of leads is a marketing activity. How many leads we get in, how many of those you convert is your sales skills. You then have customers. You can increase your revenues by increasing the number of times a customer transacts with you. So increasing the number of times they put a vacancy with you, or come back for further support, and increasing how much they spend on average when they do have a transaction with you. These are your cross-sell, upsell, but it's still sell once they're a customer. And the conversion rate up here is our getting them in as a customer for you in the first place. So this is why I'm so passionate about creating the sales pipeline. Is very much about getting this in, but don't forget, this is also sales. It's easier to sell to your existing clients than it is to get a new one in, typically. Anybody have that experience to say, yeah, no, that's easier to do? I'm sure in recruitment that's the case, getting people coming back.
I missed that, Helen.
It's easier to sell again to an existing client
100%, yeah.
than it is to get a new one in. Yeah. Because they already know, like, and trust you. You're already set up on their purchasing system. There's so much that makes that an easier sell. But often people get sucked into, let's get more clients. I'd rather get more from the existing clients.
Okay.
First off.
Yeah.
Who keeps in touch with their clients, encourages, so always go for the repeat sale or a different product from your offering ahead of new ones, because it's going to bring the money in quicker. But the whole thing revolves, all of those 5 levers revolve around testing and measuring what is going on. We learn and we can create predictability by knowing what typically happens. And we only know what typically happens if we measure repeatedly what is happening. So when we do a piece of marketing, how many leads do we get in when we take people through? And that's what we're going to look at today. So I think I mentioned to some of you on our quick call yesterday, we're going to fly through the marketing bit because I want to get onto the sales bit, but I'm going to assume you've got a few different strategies that are going to be bringing in your leads. Maybe you're doing Facebook posts, maybe you've got a website, you're doing SEO, you're doing Google ads. You've got different things here, and I would always say you want a minimum of 3. You don't want to be a one-trick pony, just in case something happens to that. I was talking a couple of years ago to it was a ladies' clothing retailer, online retailer, and they purely on Instagram with influencers. And Instagram changed its algorithm, and they went from a 30,000 a month business to 3 or 4, like overnight. It was devastating. And they've got no experience, no numbers, no testing and measuring on any other strategy. So she was starting absolutely from ground up in anything else. So don't be a one-trick pony. Make sure you've got a few ongoing. And then these inquiries, this first tickle of a lead is going to go into your leads bucket through your marketing funnel. So I thought just to illustrate very quickly, little mini case study for some of my events. This was last year back in April, and then I did the same event in January the following year. And just to illustrate, the marketing delegates for that event came from so many different directions. But LinkedIn was always a good one. Email is always a good one for us. Interestingly, through coronavirus, Bucks Business First has really come up much higher because they started doing their events newsletter. Massively helpful for me for running my events anyhow. I think a number of you have come in today through the Bucks Business First promotions. So just you be able to know your leads as they're coming in, where are they coming in from? Could you write a table like this for your business? Yeah. If not, start tracking them. Either ask people, how did you hear about us? Or, use the Facebook pixels, and there's all sorts of ways of tracking between Google ads. It's all very clever. I'm not an expert on it, but there's definitely ways, especially online, you can track exactly where people are coming from. So there's no excuse for not knowing what is working in your world. So then we've got them. So we've got an inquiry. We've got when I call them a lead, that's someone where you've got a way of talking to them. So you've maybe got their individual email address, it's not info at, or you've got a phone number that's a direct line to them, not reception. But then you need to take them through this step. Before they buy, they're going to have to know you, know about you. They're going to have to like you, because we actually only do business with people we like. Would you agree?
Yeah, generally.
and unless you're forced to, but that's unpleasant and you won't do it again. And we need to trust who we're going to do business with. And the higher value your product, the more trust you're going to have to generate, because it's a bigger outlay. So all our marketing, and increasingly with so many of also very online driven, it's really seamless between, I don't like to say now when marketing stops and sales begins in many ways, because it is very seamless, and throughout that journey you need to be giving them reason to build trust in you, to get to know you, and for them to like what they're seeing. Very pertinent to our group here today, given how online you are. Couple of stats here. This one from Marcus Sheridan. He's my absolute favorite author at the moment. Anybody read his book? They Ask, You Answer. Fabulous, really, really relevant in these times about answering. You need to be answering the questions that your prospects have, because your prospects are now on average 80% through their buying decision before they will pick up the phone and talk to you or send you an email. They're already 80% of the way through to making their decision. How are they doing that? Websites, they're Googling, they're researching, they're asking people, they're checking reviews. There's so much, literally laptop research that they can do. But by the time they raise a query, they're pretty much for you, or they're pretty much thinking they're going somewhere else, but they want 3 quotes to make sure. But they're a long way through the process. So what have you got out there that helps them through that process? And this is where the They Ask, You Answer book from Marcus Sheridan comes in. So do have a look at that. It's a very readable book actually as well. And then the very similar, but it is subtly different, factoid, if you like, from Forbes. They're saying 80% of B2B purchasing cycles are completed before the buyer considers contacting the vendor. They've actually made the decision. So your marketing is your sales in that case, because you're not going to get a chance to do anything else.
The funny thing is, though, is that might be the case, but then they still go through the process of pretending that they're interviewing all 3 of their required number of competition, etc. Have to interview 3, have to see 3, but actually we've made our decision anyway.
Yes, and those are going to be for the more corporate, larger, more
corporate side. Yeah,
corporate side, where they've got those sort of responsibility type objectives. A lot of SMEs won't, because I'm forever telling my clients, don't go yet, get 2 other quotes. So a lot of people don't. They're just going to go. They're going to see something like it and go for it. So your websites, your posts have to do your selling for you ahead of them even getting to you. So looking at our sales process, so when it does involve us as people, because they've got to us, so not all of them are like that, but we've got our prospects in. Then we have, so I've laid out here, we often think about conversion rate as being how many of our leads do we convert into somebody who buys our services. So the big fat arrow at the top here, which is your ultimate conversion rate. But I think it's more helpful to think about what are the steps you're taking your prospects through on the journey to making that decision. And each one of those little steps has its own conversion rate. So when somebody makes an initial contact with you and you have that, I don't know, some of you might respond with an initial email, some of you might have an initial phone call, but you'll have some initial contact. For some of you fully online, it might be an auto response, something or another that they get. That initial communication, the purpose of that is just to get them onto the next step. You're not actually selling your own product at that point. If it's something of value that needs so the higher value your product or service, the more steps you need, because these steps are building that know, like, and trust. So obviously, if we're going to the corner shop and buying a bar of chocolate, we don't need all of this. If we're spending several £1000s, either on the initial product or because it's a retained service that over time is going to be a significant investment, then we do need this. We needs to be deeper and more thorough, the higher the value. So typically, and shout out what steps you go through, you might have them in a different order, but typically there's some kind of initial contact. Then there's some kind of info gathering. You might ask them to fill out a form ahead. You might take them through a questionnaire, or they might not know it's a questionnaire, but in your head it is, as you're finding a fuller briefing on their requirements. They might send out an RFQ, who knows? Do you get those, Michael? Actually, you're invited to tender on any of your stuff? Yeah. So then you're given, well, they've given you stuff, but then I would still go, okay, what do you want to know? Because they've probably given all you the factual stuff. And actually, by the way, people buy on emotion, whatever they say. People buy on emotion and justify on logic. When you get an RFQ, what do you get? Logic or emotion? Logic. Yeah, I'm lip reading there. I don't know why I can't hear you, Michael. But...
Oh, sorry. I'll speak up. I'm whispering. Yeah, it's logic.
Yeah. My lip reading's doing okay then. So yes, an RFQ is going to be pretty much a logical document, isn't it? So I'd want to be going back and going, I've got that, I've just got a few questions, and those questions are going, why is this really important? What about, why are you doing it now? What's the, let's dig under that a little bit. Some of you might do an initial sort of scoping proposal. Some that's totally not necessary. It depends on the business. You might go out with some options. We've got option A, B, or C, which one's fitting you best. Some of you will need to go and visit the premise or the people. Some of you might want your customers might want to come and see you, depending on your product or service. So there might be some of those visits, briefing things going on. Some people, I was talking with a guy who did garden rooms. Obviously garden rooms have been flying off the shelves in the last year, but this was about 2 or 3 years ago, and he did his visit right at the beginning of his sales process, and before he'd got into initial proposal. So what happened was he was going around the countryside quite extensively, like 2 hours away, doing a measuring up brief, going back with the proposal, which was like way too expensive, way beyond the budget of the people, because they had no idea what the rough budget was. So he's lost days of his time doing quotes that never went anywhere. So we said, actually, let's put the visit back and bring in an initial proposal and go, from what you're saying, it's going to be in a range of this to this. How does that fit with your budget? Because then it removed a stack of wasted time. So if you've got something like that, that's where the order of these things is very much tailored to your business. And then there's a final proposal, and then of course you want them to agree the sale. So these are what I call big chunk steps of a process. Who at this point thinks they've got a sales process defined? I'm being rude, that's saying thing.
Sort of. Mine's very similar to yours. That's exactly how I go through any project.
Yeah.
And there'll be times when I'll go back, we might do an initial proposal, but then we'll do another initial and another, because, we're not always dealing with just one person. Sometimes it might be we're dealing with one person, but they have a decision maker above them, or they have a team of decision makers, and somebody will, oh, what about, let's do this. And so that proposal will come back and forth. But what I'm finding at the moment is the leap from initial proposal to probably final proposal. Sometimes we'll get to visit or brief the client, but it's giving them the initial proposal and then going, yeah, we'll take a look at it, and that's it. It stops.
Right.
And I might try to follow it up, but because I'm not a seller, basically. And my sales are quite poor.
We'll make you one. We'll make you into one. So that's great, and you know that because you've got a sense, and that's the beauty of tracking your conversion rate between each one of these steps, because then you'll know where you're losing them.
Yeah.
Because that means that if you're sending an initial proposal and then you're not going any further, that means we need to do something different with that initial proposal. You've got to do something, or back to be, do, have. You've got to be or do something different to get over that hump.
Yeah.
And we can look at what that might be. And the other thing that sometimes you need are the little mini steps in between. So these are the big steps, but in between there is the little email, the little call. Did you get that information I sent? Actually, I'm sending you some information. I always call it the car park, and people love this one. My car parking call. Okay, so often I will do the final big razzmatazz part of my process. I'll go and visit the client because I like to see them in their environment. But I want to make sure that I'm expected when they're remembered before I turn up. So I don't phone up and say, are we still good for tomorrow? Because what does that give them permission to say? No, I'm busy. Yes, we don't want that. So we don't give them that opportunity. What I do is I say, just want to check, is there anything particular I need to know about parking? Because I know it can be a bit of a hot potato. Have they got permission to say, oh, I can't make it? Well, they've got to go really out their way to say that then. Because I'm interested in knowing, who am I going to get accused of blocking in, or, is it easy, or do I need to block 3 roads around 10 corners away, or whatever. So that helps me get over that bridge of people pulling out of that meeting. It's just a little one, hello, I'm coming tomorrow. If you've forgotten, now you've got time to rearrange to make sure you can go back to what you've committed to, is what that message says without saying it. So if I ever have calls to talk to any of you about your car parking, you'll know why. What's your car parking question? Yeah, I had to change it up a bit though. Obviously with Zoom, that's didn't work. But yeah, we have to adapt these things. So we want to be measuring, as I say, each of those little steps so we know where it's falling down and we could do it. I was once working with a nursery and they tracked it all the way through. And they had this really weird drop-off point. After the parents, their children's nursery, parents come to see the nursery, liked it, went off, sent back the form, the application form, but didn't actually start the child at the nursery. That's a bit odd, but they didn't know that's where they were losing people till they tracked it. When they tracked it, that became apparent. Business owner does a bit of recce, what's happening to these forms, discovers that her super efficient administrator had decided what would be a good idea is to batch up all of these applications for nursery place and only go back to the parent immediately the term before they were due to start, or the 3 weeks before they were due to start. Can you see the problem with that? Parent needs nursery place, has no reassurance that they've got a place. So what do they have to do? They have to go somewhere else where they're going to say, yes, we can take your darling little child in. So that was so easy to turn that around, change that process, and guess what? Conversion rate went up significantly. They had another one, which was actually the look round. It was looking a bit scruffy, so that took a bit longer to focus on. But they improved it and got the results. So we need to be tracking this. So once you've got your process, literally track it by date. Turn it into an Excel sheet. What are your leads? Give them a, what business they are or person they are. And what date, because you can see where they stop moving or where things slow down. For those of you doing online sales, just think of this in a very accelerated fashion. So the info gathering might be they download a gated piece of content. There might be a form to fill in. There'll be different videos to watch, and you can get things, widgets and stuff that tells you when somebody's watched a video, which means you can set up sales funnels that take people through this process. and you'll still be able to track how quickly. It will be a much quicker process, but where they're dropping out. Dwell time, do they get stuck in the basket and it doesn't go through to purchase? So it's the same process, just more concentrated. When you know your conversion rates, and this is how the predictable sales bit works, is if you know what you get out from the leads that you're getting in, and you know how many leads you get for any particular marketing activity. So if I could tell you I got one client per webinar, for example, and I wanted to get up the rate to 3 times that, what am I going to have to do?
Do more webinars.
I need to do three webinars, not one. Yeah. It's that simple. Now I can work on my sales process. I can work on getting the target audience for the marketing. I can work on those 5 different dimensions and keep getting it more efficient. But once I know my numbers, it's predictable. It might be predictable slow or predictable hard work, but I can predict what's going to happen, and then I can sharpen it up. And then also I can see where we're losing a bit of momentum. So, oops, we've forgot, if we've missed out a step in our sales process or our marketing process, if we forgot to send the reminder email, or we forgot to, and it's easy to do unless you're absolutely tracking it religiously. So yeah, hand on heart, I'm not perfect. What did I forget to do for this? Send it to the Marlow Chamber of Commerce. I could have sent it 3 weeks ago to them. As it was, it went out with the minutes yesterday. Well, that's too short notice, really. It's a part of my process we missed out. Therefore, it's not going to create the same result, hasn't got as many people as it would have done had I done that. So when you're tracking it through, you can then, as I say, you just ramp up more. You can amplify it when you know what the result is going to be. It is, as someone said, that's the hard work way of doing it, but you make it less hard work as you improve each one of those steps. So this is how we can improve it. When we know what's working, we can make it less hard work by systematizing it, automating email chains, getting systems, especially all of you online. You can get things talking to each other, flowing through, automated bots, this, that, and the next thing. Make sure you don't miss out steps by having checklists. Guess what's printed out on my desk? Scripts. Who likes the sound of scripts?
Yeah,
to a degree.
Yeah,
to a degree,
you've made the materials, there's no point keep redoing it. You might as well just have one and tweak it.
A script that is you is great. That reminds you to cover all the bits you need to cover in a conversation. When you find that magic question that's unlocked a great insight, you want to use it again. The reason you do that is when you put it in the script. You can template. There's great software like Proposify that templates your quotes and your proposals, etc. So loads of stuff to make life easier, but don't do that until you know it's working. Otherwise, you're going to spend time automating when actually we could get it to a better state before you do that. So we're on the nose of 2 o'clock here. So I hope I've given you some food to thought. Food, I can't even say it, I'm talking so fast. Who's got some food for thought? Who's got a bit of homework to be doing?
Plenty, thank you.
Yeah, plenty.
I do. Helen, can I ask a question, a quick one?
Yes.
Yeah, after sending emails, like you had advised me to send emails to private schools.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I managed to do that. So when can I start tracking? Do I need to chase them up, or what should I do?
Absolutely. Assume nobody responds to an email. An email is permission to call in my book. If you send an email, expect an answer, it won't happen.
Right.
So it's a permission to call from the next day. Yep. I mean, schools, it can be tricky to get through to the right person, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I want you to write down what are your top 3 actions you're going to do? Commit to do 3 things as a result of the hour you've spent here with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd like to help you ongoing. So I've got a couple of offers for you that I would love you to take up for your own good. One of which is I always offer people on my webinars a free 30-minute coaching session. This is a genuine coaching session, not a sales meeting. I'm happy to do a sales meeting as well, but that's a different thing. So if you want 30 minutes with me to go over a particular point in your sales process, a particular aspect you're challenging, maybe Michael, if you want to address that, where you're losing them piece, absolutely. Just put me please in the chat box. We'll sort that out. I'll also get Barbara to send a feedback format tomorrow, but just stick it in the chat box.